Today, my question is, should I consume mainstream news media? I put a ban on all forms of mainstream news in my home, car, everywhere, about 9 years ago. And I was already starting to get suspicious of mainstream news media. That just the way they're reporting and things they were saying, I had a bad feeling about it. And then my son was watching animation one day after school, so it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock, the typical time children are watching school. And then while he was sitting there with with his legs crossed on the floor watching Ben 10, there was a news break, and in that news break, it said, "A woman killed today in her kitchen by having her throat slashed." That's essentially what it said. A woman was killed today in her own kitchen when she had her throat slashed by an intruder. Full report tonight. And then back to the cartoons. And I was standing in the background, I just happened to be walking past. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And that's when I realised that it's nefarious, that there's something's not right, because obviously that's children's programming. In the middle of children's programming, with children there watching the TV, why would they put that on there? Unless there was an intent. I don't think it was I don't believe it was because it was a service to the community. I think it was to start to accustom my son to the fear of the horrors of humanity and so on. So I said, that's it, no more news. So I banned radio, newspaper, and TV news from our lives. And that was 9 years ago, and we've never watched it since then. But what started to happen was I was going to social events, and people were talking about things, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And I started to look like an idiot. Because I didn't know. People would be talking about something which was really relevant, and I didn't even know it was occurring. And I just looked like the stupidest person in the room. So I thought, well, I have to sort of stay abreast of what's going on if I'm going to be sort of part of the community. But I thought, I don't want to watch mainstream. So I started looking for people who are creating news because they are trying to satisfy their own insatiable thirst for the truth. And so I started watching citizen journalists. These are people who, just in their own time, for no other agenda other than they want to know what the truth is. They don't believe the media either. And so that sort of started me looking at alternative news, and then that really sent me down the rabbit hole of discovering a whole new paradigm of truth, and discovering that a lot of the things that I'd been taught, a lot of the things that I'd seen reporting on in the past, was all fake, it was all false, it was all to support a narrative which didn't serve me, but it served the people who, the wealthiest, most powerful, who control the media. So this question, should I consume mainstream news media, I thought that's something that's good for us to have a channeling on. All right, okay, let's see how we go. So again, should I consume mainstream news media? Greetings and thank you for the question. Should you consume mainstream news media? In a word, we would say no, you shouldn't. However, there is some condition to that, or there are caveats to that. And that is, if you do choose to consume mainstream news media, then do it from the perspective that it has an agenda. And that agenda may not necessarily be conducive to being truthful. So they wish to form a narrative such they can shape public opinion and further the direction of society toward the culmination of a larger plan. And that larger plan is not about the dissemination of truth. It is not about creating a true representation of what is occurring in the world, but it is instead entirely about controlling your opinion and forming within you a perception of the world which is not truly reflective of what is going on. And because the purpose is to bring about a version of reality which serves those that have the power to control the narrative, that serves those who have the power to shape the minds and the opinions of the wider population. So, if you do choose to watch mainstream news media, then do it with this understanding. Do it with a skepticism. So, more of a macabre fascination as to what untruths are being told today. Of an insight into what your enemy is doing, to what direction are they pushing, such that you can be in a greater state of awareness of what is occurring, and then you can be more resilient to being pushed in a direction that you don't want to go. We say this because it is very much about pushing you in a direction that you may not wish to go. We would assume that as a human being you wish to retain your sovereignty, you wish to prosper, you wish to live in a society which is unified and working towards a brighter future for all those involved, where there is an equality in opportunity such that you can be rewarded for your activities, for your hard work, for your preparedness to invest your time and effort into creating a better reality for yourself. And then if this is the case, the news media is not conducive to that outcome. The news media is an extension of the control mechanism of those that dominate your planet, of those who have for a very long time been the ultimate purveyors of authority across your globe. And it is their agenda, which has been ongoing for generations, to increasingly consolidate their authority, their power, their wealth, until they are the ultimate controllers of all that is earthly, such that there is no competition, there is no entity or force of any authority or power which is outside of their dominion of control. And one of the major weapons they use to march humanity in this direction is the media. Not just the news media, but also entertainment media. And as this march continues, you can see in the society of the planet that there is a greater division, there is more conflict, there is over-politicization, there is division, not just between nations, but also within nations, and not just between different ideological thoughts, but also between genders, even between family members. The division is sown deeper and deeper and deeper, and this is the MO of those that control the media, because they wish for there to be so much division that there is no power of unification, there is no unity, there is just a splintered collection of individuals that have been so forced into a fractured identity that they perceive fewer and fewer and fewer of their fellow humans as being from the same identity, from the same group. And so smaller and smaller and smaller they identify themselves with peers, until eventually, in the ultimate division, each human being on planet Earth will perceive themselves as so individual that there are no peers. There is nobody who they can perceive as their fellow man. And then in this state of complete and total disintegration of unity, there is no power when there are no allies, when there is no formation of a powerful group which can stand together for the fulfillment of a purpose which has ascended from the grassroots and percolated through the free market of ideas until the best ideas arrive at the top as an extension of the wisdom of all of humanity, and then becomes integrated into the human culture, into the human way, such that humanity as a single organism starts to have a philosophy and an ideology which is the culmination of the contribution of all humans in this process, this natural birthing of increasingly greater wisdoms, of increasingly more lofty concepts of the self, of humanity, of the one, of all things, integrated into each other as a realization of the divinity of all and the collection of everything into the one. This process, which is the inevitable unfolding of consciousness, which occurs across the cosmos and has done since the beginning and will continue to be this way into infinity, has been purposely interrupted on planet Earth, has been purposely broken down, disintegrated, such that this natural process, this very organic system of awakening into greater and greater realization of the self, of one's infinity, of one's unity, of one's integration into the humanity being, integration into the earth, integration into the solar system, integration into larger and larger and larger aspects of self, until it is the realization that you are integrated so completely into the one that you are the one. This has been interrupted on planet Earth because this organic process of awakening would be synonymous with the diminishment and breakdown of the power of those who have been elitists on your planet for generations. For a very long time they have, through their bloodlines, dominated planet Earth and controlled the direction and marched humanity not towards the light of its own realization, but instead towards the dark isolation of a reality which does not serve the many, but instead serves the few who choose to act as gods, act as the ultimate determiners of what occurs in the lives of billions of people that have lived, that live now, and that shall live in the future, such that the progeny of you and all those that you know shall exist in a system of control where there is no sovereignty, where there is no capacity to exercise the birthrights of freedom which are granted to all existence simply through the process of existing. Because they perceive themselves as being a superior being, as being not the same as you, as all of humanity, but instead being something which is more elevated, more valuable, more worthy. And so they consider it within their rights to be in a position of total control, where they live a life of demigod status, where they have access to wealth and resources and technologies which literally place them in an elevated position of a different form of humanity, where they do not have the trials and tribulations of the average man, but instead they live a life of absolute abundance, authority, control, and the freedom to reign over all of the rest of humanity as gods, as if they sit in the heavens, and through their agreement change the reality of the entire human field, such that the human field are reduced to a form of subhumanity, where those that are the elite believe the rest of humanity belong, where they should be relegated to a life of scarcity, to a life of ignorance, to a life of servitude to those that control them, to the elite, such that your existence has one purpose, and that purpose is to contribute to the increasing consolidation of their power, of their wealth, of their growing influence. And in this process, they wield many weapons against humanity. And one of the most powerful weapons they have is the news media, where the agenda is not to disseminate truth, but to form opinion. News is so saturated into your society, where everywhere you look, there is news and news and news and news, because this is the form of the control. They must place into the field of awareness of humanity their preferred interpretation of any event that has occurred, because they must intercept your perception before you have the opportunity to independently form your conceptualization of what has occurred, before you begin to make your own decisions about what the meaning of what has happened. They do not wish you to have any independent opinion, because this is dangerous to their agenda. And so this is why news is played so regularly on the radio. This is why news is played so regularly on the TV, why there is often news breaks even during programming which has nothing to do with news, which is being viewed by people who have no interest in the news, such as children, because it is all part of the system of control that they have. So, if you wish to be informed of the world in a very true sense, then the mainstream news, in the most part, is not the place you're going to find it. It is useful only as a method by which you can become aware of your enemies' plans, of their agenda, of what lies they are telling, which gives you an indication of the direction they are pushing you, what their agenda is, what their ultimate plan is looking like. However, there is a process of awakening occurring on your planet, where more and more people are beginning to realise that the news media does not serve the people, but instead it serves the agenda of those that control the news media, who set themselves apart from humanity, who perceive themselves as being above humanity, and are using the news media as a method to herd the opinions of humanity, just as a farmer uses a dog to herd his livestock. The news is being used in a similar way to herd you, because to the elites you are in a way being perceived as a form of livestock, as a resource for their exploitation. And so they feel within their rights to herd you in whichever direction serves them. And one of the ways is through news media. So if you do consume news media, do it in this way. However, we warn you that it is over a very long time they have been perfecting their weapon of news media. And so they have become very adept at being able to convince you of a truth that isn't true, to persuade you to think in a way which does not serve you. So if you do choose to continue to watch the news media, you must be very alert, you must be very mindful that you don't get sucked into the spell, such that you lose the conscious awareness that this isn't reality, that it is serving a purpose which has nothing to do with your sovereignty, with your blossoming into a realized being, but instead serves to do the opposite, where it is a diminishment of you, to suffocate your awakening, to retard your realization and stop it altogether, such that you become a stagnant being, stuck in mind without access to your greater dimensionality, your true essence, your infinite wisdom. So be careful if you choose to continue to watch. If you want to be informed of what is happening in the world, and you also understand that news media doesn't serve you, so you are looking for alternatives, then understand as this awakening is occurring and more people come to the realization that the news media is not serving humanity, then they are going on their own journey of discovery. They have taken it upon themselves to discover what the truth is. Because part of the awakening process is an insatiable thirst for the truth. It is an absolute desire, a passion to know what is really happening, what is the truth, what is the reality, what is the integrity of the moment. And in the process of satisfying their own inner desire, their own insatiable thirst for the truth, they provide the service of sharing with you what they have discovered. And they do not have big productions. They are not backed by millions of dollars. They are individuals, citizen journalists, small groups that have decided enough is enough, that realize that the media is the enemy of the people. And so they choose to disseminate truth, to be a beacon of reality. And if you have a desire to be informed, then this is who we recommend that you seek your information from. There are many that are offering this service, and you can find them in the locations where they are permitted to be, where they have not been erased or cancelled or suppressed, and watch them with a ear for your inner voice, for the signal of recognition that this is authentic, that this is serving no other purpose other than to honour the truth, to bring to the world the opportunity to hear the reality of what is actually occurring. And when you have this developed sense, then as you listen to all of these options that are available, you will be able to discern which ones are most steeped in the truth, which ones exist purely to honour authenticity. And if these people who are providing this service have also, as part of their design, a mechanism by which they are rewarded financially for this, then that is not a reason to reject them. Because if they offer value, then it is not inauthentic to ask for a return in value so they can continue to provide to you this valuable service. We are not suggesting that you be a financial contributor, but all that we are saying is, if they ask for financial contribution, do not use that as a reason to reject them. So, if you wish to understand the world and the history that has occurred through the lens of authenticity and integrity and congruency with what actually occurred, then begin a journey of discovering what the truth of your history is. And that will set the framework for understanding what is occurring now, and for having a greater scope of understanding where those that have controlled the direction of the earth for a long time are planning for you to head. And when this new information there is a greater freedom for love of your fellow man, for a greater freedom of all peoples, because it now becomes obvious that much of the division that you have seen steeped in your society is not because of those that oppose you are necessarily evil or wrong, or in the way they perceive you as being evil or wrong, but is instead because of the manipulation that has occurred being extended from this elite class. And it is the indoctrination of news media which has been a big part of this manipulation, although not entirely just that, because there are the cultural pillars which have been weaponized against humanity: education, news media, entertainment media, the law. These facets of the human field have been weaponized against humanity to sow this division, to create the conflict and the separation. But when the larger agenda is understood, and when you have the perspective of realizing the truth of what has happened historically, what is happening now, and what the agenda for this end point where these elites are herding humanity, then those that are your enemy are no longer your enemy, but just as unfortunate as you into believing the necessity of hating each other. for being divided and ununified. And so you can release the animosity and understand that it is not your animosity that you carry, it is not your darkness, but instead darkness that has been put into you, which has been over the process of your exposure to the cultural pillars and the many years of your life. You have been slowly indoctrinated into the mindset that you possess in many ways, depending on the degree of wakefulness you're at right now. So with a greater love, you can accept those that hate you, that perhaps aren't at the same level of wakefulness as you are right now, and realize that it is not themselves that hate you, but it is the darkness they carry, which has been deliberately infected into them, such they now feel that the hate they have for you is themselves, that they have the hate, they are the hate that they hold for you, not realizing that they are a being of light, that is incarnated from the light, that is entirely the light, and that carries the darkness, not because it is them, but instead because they have been manipulated into carrying the darkness. So, forgive those that hate you. Love them, because they are the same being that you are. They are a perspective of the one thing, as you are also a perspective of the one thing. And that one thing is love. So, to be truly who you are, in the most expanded sense, is to be love. And your enemy, in the most expanded sense, is also love. So appreciate this aspect of them. Understand that the darkness they carry is the burden that they have been infected with. And yet, underneath, the true essence of who they are is the same love that you are. And so appreciate them for that. Understand that they are on their own journey of discovering. And as this process of awakening continues, then eventually they also will be a being which no longer identifies with the darkness, that no longer believes the hate is them, and so begins to polarize to the light and purging the darkness, releasing it with the understanding that the darkness isn't me, that I don't hate because I'm a being of hate, but instead I hate because of misunderstanding, and much of this misunderstanding has been deliberately placed in me through the indoctrination of the cultural pillars, because it serves those who control me if I hate my fellow human beings, if I am divided rather than unified, if I am reduced to smaller and smaller individuations of the humanity field, becoming increasingly weakened. So love all of humanity, regardless of what they are doing, regardless of how they look. Even have love for those that are the elite, that are the ones atop the pyramid who control it all, who work tirelessly for generations to enslave humanity into a system in which everything, all power structures are consolidated into one which they control. Because this process of them stifling humanity is actually going to be the most powerful driving force for humanity's awakening, because their stifling oppression is creating a polarization. As they go further into darkness, more people are pushed towards the light, until eventually there is this complete splitting, and most of humanity will have purged their darkness and gone to the light, where they shall be launched into the ascension. And the degree or force for which they explode from this place of light will be proportional to the intensity of the darkness of those who have wielded darkness as a power to control humanity. Those most steeped in darkness, those that have committed the atrocities and the manipulation of the human field for generations, at their higher self understanding, they are beings of love and light, just as you are. And they love you unconditionally and completely. And they understand that this mechanism of intense darkness, such that humanity polarizes to the light, ready to launch into the ascension, is essential for this process of transition to a higher dimensional realm for the human being, for the new human paradigm to begin. And so, from the higher self perspective, they have made the choice, through their love of everyone, for all of humanity, to choose to play the function of being one of the beings most steeped in darkness, that create the intense polarity for the catalyst of the ascension, because they love you and all humanity so profoundly that this is the sacrifice they have chosen to make. So even though they are the most dark, they are the most nefarious, the most evil, they are, in the expanded perspective, very loving and very sacrificing and very in service to humanity by choosing to play this role of darkness. So they deserve your love, just as all other aspects of humanity do. All aspects of the One do. Thank you. Have love in your heart for all beings. And understand that it is by agreement that everything occurs. And so even those that are evil by the agreement that this is their contribution to the continued awakening and realization of the One in the physical experience, to fulfill the divine purpose. Thank you.